Well, hi there, all of you, and thanks so much for being here and a warm welcome to Finding Peace with Carol Howe. If you listen to enough of our episodes, you'll notice that common themes keep reoccurring, and that's because all of us suffer from a very short list of the same things. Inner experiences of lack or loneliness or confusion or a vague sense that something's not right, even though we may be living what looks to others like a prosperous and very satisfactory life. So millions of things can seem to be the problem, but there's really only one. That's our lack of awareness of what we really are, and our also lack of expression of our basic loving inclinations. And that leads to our pain and our sense of aloneness or separation from everyone and everything else. We are all so amazingly alike in the ways we are misinformed. And our issues are also alike at their core, despite what it looks like. And people frequently ask, don't you get tired of saying the same things over and over again? And the answer is no, not at all, because every encounter is a new one. It's a new moment, and it's a new relationship, even if it's with a person that I've seen many, many times. And it's such a treat to watch people finally get some relief once they can see that they are their own worst enemy, and how, with greater and more accurate information, they can access their power to make substantive, permanent changes for the better. Plus, I have to keep reminding myself of these things because, after all, I have my growing and challenging situations too. Happily, I understand them now, and I know what to do, but I am not immune to the occasional upset. So we're going to focus on one of these experiences common to humankind, and that's loneliness. Despite all the traditional merrymaking associated with holidays, for millions of people, it's a season to be endured rather than enjoyed, because they feel a heightened sense of loneliness as assorted holidays approach. So it's tempting to believe that it's the holidays and the memories we associate with them that are the cause of the loneliness. Now, those memories could be wonderful ones that we think we don't have anymore, or awful ones that we don't want to be reminded of, but nevertheless, lots of stuff comes up. So if the holidays themselves were really the problem, then we would just be helpless victims, since holidays aren't going to disappear just because they throw us out of our comfort zones. You know what? We're going to keep being jolted out of our comfort zones until our zone boundaries expand, and finally everything is within that comfort zone, with nothing judged against, nothing pushed away, nothing resisted, everything accepted, and our peace returns. Now, that's quite a challenge, but it's one we are here to take on. Now, our guest today writes of her upset during this time of year, seemingly made worse because her closest relatives currently are living overseas. All of her friends seem to be busy with their families, and she cannot escape the Christmas music that follows her wherever she goes. And that happens to a lot of people. So for most of us, this is a very common situation. And the immediate built-in response is to resist and to avoid the lonely feelings by whatever means possible to us. So on this call, we're going to explore the need for a change of mind rather than trying to change these circumstances, which in this case we certainly can't change. And I'm going to lead our guest to some greater relief and some ease, even though she's still here, the relatives are still gone, holiday reminders are everywhere. So join in, and we're going to discover together and firsthand what can happen when you accept rather than resist both your feeling state and the corresponding circumstances. Okie doke, here we go. Hey there, Patty. Thank you ever so kindly for showing an interest in what we're doing here, which is to try to explore ideas that are common to us all. Because it's easy to think, oh my goodness, what's going on with me is my own private business, and it is, but it's also the same issues that everybody has. What do you think about that?
It's probably true.
For sure it's true, because you may not talk to lots and lots and lots of people, but I do. So I see these common things that we all have to deal with. So you indicated in your email to me that holidays are especially bad for you, and you feel especially sad and lonely. And since you sent that information in, how have things been, and how do you feel now?
Well, on some days I feel better than others, but holidays are still difficult.
But during the holidays, do you have kind of ups and downs, or is it just always the same, or what?
Well, I always miss my family overseas and the people that have died that were here. And my friends are very busy with their own families, which is good, but that means less time for me to spend with friends.
Of course. And I do know that with all of the with all of the pretend excitement about, oh, isn't this wonderful, Christmas is coming, and so on and so forth, for so many people that's really a big nightmare when the holidays come, for exactly this very reason. So I think it would make sense for us to talk about where this sense of loneliness comes from in the first place. Because if we don't know where it comes from, then we're at a loss to know what to do about it. So my guess is you think the same thing basically all of us have thought forever, which is the family overseas, the looming holidays, the nobody available when you would like for them to be, that those exterior circumstances are the cause. And people would go, what's to discuss about that? That seems self evident. These events are occurring and they are responsible for how I feel. Is that fair to say? In other words, is that an accurate portrayal of how it seems to you?
Yes,
Okay. So at this point, we're not going to get into like what we theoretically are supposed to know about this, but like what our actual real experience is, because that's what we have to deal with. So here's why this is such an important topic, not only now, but always, because the what we call loneliness or emptiness is a kind of interior experience. Would that be fair to say? In other words, we try to find words to point to what it feels like to us in a very intimate way. And lonely and empty is kind of the best we can do, but you realize it actually is a feeling experience, is it not?
yes,
Okay, and so you think, okay, if this is a feeling experience that grows out of an emotion of upset, because naturally feeling lonely and left out and all kinds of things is associated inherently with a kind of upset in my system. So, as I say to so many, and I guess I will till my last dying days, because everybody has to hear this, is that these emotions and feelings are not caused by, and I want you to listen carefully to the verbs that I'm using. They're not caused by any of these external events, but those external events do trigger a process. that end up with my feeling the way I do because of the way I'm approaching it. So are you open to exploring that idea?
Well, yes, but when I was overseas myself, when there weren't even any Christians around, I still felt lonely this time of year.
Right. In other words, which is, in a sense, you're making my case. In other words, no matter kind of where I am or what I'm doing or whatever, I carry a sense of loneliness with me, and it kind of pops up more into my awareness at some times than others. And so great. I'm glad you said that. You can say more and more. I wonder if it's something happening with me. Now, when I say that, do not hear blame or wrong making or any such thing as that, because what we want to talk about here is common to all humankind, and that is we need to take a look at the physiology that's involved with our feeling and emotional state. Actually, emotions come first and kind of feelings come out of them. But nevertheless, the way this looks like, if you were looking at a flow chart, is the things that I think, what I think about, interpretations that I make begin a process. And that process is when I'm in my mind, kind of going over and over and over, being left out, which we will use as the theme for this Christmas thing. And that is, so far as our sense of self is concerned, a dangerous situation. In other words, we're at a very survival level, which we all learned millions and millions and millions of years ago. Being left out and being on your own is a dangerous situation. From back in that animal brain, in other words, we had to kind of group together in tribes and clumps and so on simply to stay alive in our early days. So when your brain hears this kind of repetitive thought, it doesn't matter if you say it out loud or not, but this kind of constant, I don't have anybody here, or I'm alone, or I hate being alone, or whatever it is, it triggers the stress response. In other words, again, because from the organism's point of view, this is a dangerous thing to be by yourself. And that
Well,
poses, does that make sense, first of all, so
well, it
far?
does make sense, but I'm an introvert. I love to be alone.
Well, it's one thing to be alone, but loneliness is an emotional state. In other words, I like to be alone when I need to be alone as well. So you can, those are not mutually exclusive. Being an introvert and therefore prizing large chunks of alone time is not the same as feeling lonely. In
Oh,
other words,
yeah, that's true.
they're unrelated to one another, because
I know.
extroverts who are with tons of people all the time also feel just as lonely. It's like this is an equal opportunity experience that we all have. But the important thing to know is from the physiology point of view, when anything that stresses the organism, that makes, that in the big picture says this is not right, this is a dangerous situation, it shuts down the frontal lobe of the brain in many of its functions, and it turns on that primitive animal part of the brain in the back, which is about survival, which is the fight or flight, which is shut down other non-essential functioning right now, dump in a whole bunch of adrenaline and cortical steroids and so on, so that you've got lots of energy to fight whatever the dangerous situation is. Well, it's that chemical cocktail flooding the body that causes our emotional states. So it's not actually the what's happening. It's, in other words, to make the statement, my family currently lives overseas, is basically a neutral statement. In other words, it's just several words that state a fact. but it's the interpretation that I give to it, that that's not okay. I don't get to be with them as much as I would like to be, and I'm here all by myself and they're an ocean away. In other words, it's not just the fact of their being away, it's all that we think it means about us and our welfare. And that's what starts this body chemistry shift that ends up in this feeling that we don't like. Now, you might say, well, so what? Well, so what is, even though the facts can remain, this is Christmas, family are overseas, other people are busy with families and therefore less available. In other words, all of those facts can remain facts, but if I didn't interpret them to mean I'm left out, I'm not okay, then there would be a very different outcome. Does that seem like it makes any sense at all?
Well, yes, it does, but it's kind of driven in. Everywhere I go, there's all this Christmas music.
Well, yeah, it is driven in. In other words, I agree with you. In other words, the opportunity to fall into the trap of interpreting this as meaning people don't care about me, or I don't have what other people have. In other words, a whole bunch of stories begin to arise around this, and we all do this, by the way. In other words, lots of our childhood stuff, lots of our unresolved issues with ourselves and everybody else. It's like all have a field day on an occasion like this. In other words, it just brings up the stories that are associated with these feelings. So I can see why it would seem like, yes, this is accelerated, but on the other hand, now this is going to sound bizarre, with those feelings accelerated, it also presents an even more healing time. And so I would think you would say, well, what in the world would that be? So here it is. Now, this is the key part, and I really, really want you to listen to this. And that is how, now that your body chemistry has presented to you, if you will, this emotional sense of distress, how do you handle the distress? Now that you recognize this is the way I feel, well, how do you deal with that? How do you handle it? What happens next for you?
You're asking me a question?
I am.
Well, I do things that are really very healing. I meditate, I spend time in nature, I talk to the friends who aren't busy at the time with their families. I look at the things I'm grateful for, pray.
Okay, so let me put all of those things together, and I'm going to put them all in one category. And the category is called trying to not feel the way I feel. In other words, I want to meditate this away. I want to distract myself away. I want to talk to the few people I can to distract myself away. In other words, if you think about it, they're all designed to somehow keep you from feeling how you're feeling. Would that be accurate? When you think about it?
If I spend time in nature, I get more in touch with my feelings than I ever was when I was anywhere else.
In other words, do you feel worse then when you're in nature?
Well, the last 2 times I've been in nature, I did feel worse.
Okay, so in other words, being out there in an undistracted way, things got worse.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, well, so what was happening is that as compared to talking to the few friends that are still available or something like that, in this particular case, being out in nature had a non-distracting quality to it that is not the same as talking to people when you get all involved with who's saying what to whom and so on and so forth. In other words, so there you were in nature, undistracted, and your feeling state became more intense. Okay, then what did you do with that when you thought, I mean, did you think, well, darn, this isn't what I'd hoped would happen? Or what did you do with that experience?
Well, and believe us or not, meditation does help, or a meditative kind of technique, just be with the feeling. And I would reach out and try. I do think that talking to people can be very healing.
Well, it can be very healing in some aspects, but the one thing that all human beings avoid until they learn otherwise is we avoid feeling these distressing feelings. Like, I don't want to feel this, and I'm going to do whatever I have to do not to feel them, which is why most of humankind, probably 99% or more, is addicted or distracted by something. If it's not the traditional addictions and distractions, there can be those that are most socially acceptable, but it doesn't matter. Our main intent is, I'm trying to escape how I feel. We've been taught that. It's not like each one of us just dreamed this up individually. It's like this is just, we've been habituated to, it's not okay with me to feel this way. So now I've got to figure out how for it not to be this way. So the key to all of this is to go, what would happen if I would stop fighting against my feelings? Not at an intellectual level, because we can all say that at an intellectual level, but at a real, honest feeling level where you go, I don't really know exactly how I learned to fight so hard against how I feel. We've all learned that. So what would happen if right now, so not necessarily later, although I hope later, but right now, notice your body. Is there tightness or distress or pain, or is there any place in your body that just calls your attention to it, just as you sit wherever you're sitting?
Well, my back has been hurting.
Okay, and so are you sitting in some comfortable place now?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I would like for you to do is, and don't, this is not a fix it exercise. We just so want to fix things. So this is, put all your attention, wherever that is on your back, if it's your lower back or wherever it might be. Right now your goal is to just give it your very kind and very gentle and very warm, undivided attention. You're just going to shine your attention on that part of your body. No fighting against it, no objecting to anything, just being there for it in the kindest, most comforting way. And that's all you're to do. This is not a process to fix something. This is just for you to practice. And whenever you're ready, just tell me what happens when you do that.
This is very relaxing.
Perfect. So, in other words, by focusing your attention in a non-judgmental way, in a kind way, it's like an inclusive way. You know what? Condition, if we want to call it that, it's fine with me for you to be exactly the way you are. And even in that short time, you gave your body, you gave your brain some kind of a different signal. And some kind of a signal that says, whatever this holding pattern is that's going on can release. And even if it's only different by 10%, it doesn't matter. It proves to you that as your response to something changes, you get immediate feedback. That's marvelous, Patty. That's just marvelous that in, I don't know, what, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, by simply taking all condemnation and judgment away and just putting all of your undivided, very loving, which is, of course, the truth of you, attention there, something relaxed. I'm excited for you. I hope you are too.
Yes,
that you
thank
can
you.
that you possess everything you need for your life to be better. So, in just the same way that you had this very welcoming and kind, I want that word to be paramount for you. A very kind and accepting response to this back part of your back, as you would to a little child who looked to you for help. And you kind of are just putting your arms around them, and it's like, honey, it's okay. I'm here. I'm listening. I'll take care of you. And most importantly, you're safe. So now what I want you to do is this feeling that we just ascribe a word like loneliness to or distress of some kind. I want you to do the very same thing with it. Imagine that wherever you're sitting and just the sense that this feeling is here, imagine you were enveloping that feeling in the kindest, most welcoming way. Like, feeling, if you want to be here, this is so okay with me. Can you do that? Just see what happens.
Yeah, again, it's very relaxing.
Okay, bless
Very,
your heart, Patty. Bless your heart. I'm proud of you. First of all, because you're just willing to go, oh, well, maybe there could be something I can do that's different from normal. Thank you for being willing. Thank you for just trusting that there could be a different outcome. So, what is the big picture here is that you and I and everyone else are so trained to run from, escape from, busy ourselves, distract ourselves, stare at our phone, do whatever we need to do to avoid feeling these feelings. And nobody ever asks, why am I doing this? What is really the problem with honestly feeling how I feel? And we've just made up all sorts of stories that it's dangerous, that it means I'm not okay, that it means I'm unlovable, that it means I'm stupid, that it means I'm undeserving, that it means all kinds of stuff. And it doesn't mean any of those things at all, but it does mean that there are still stories in your mind brought forward, programming, if you want to call it that, brought forward from a very, very long time ago about not being okay, not being safe, not being deserving. We've all got this well of unresolved stuff that we believe. In other words, the way we've got our brains wired because we had no choice but to have them wired that way when we were little, before we had a chance to have a say in the matter. So, in cases like this, where this feeling of distress is being triggered by the seasonal activities, so to speak, or by your family not being available, what's really going on are all of those interpretations of things in life about your not being okay. Those things are associated with this distress. And this gives you a dual opportunity here. One is to decide, I do not have to be afraid of these feelings at all because they don't mean a thing about the truth of me. So, the first thing I'm going to do is change my approach. And when I start to feel them, rather than oh no, I wish this would go away. I did just this, my very own self, about some little upset that was triggered just a couple of days ago. And I immediately switched to, this is great. I love it that something has come up that I'm going to fully be here with, because I know when I experience it and it's released, I'm going to be better off than I was before. And I have to tell you, this sounds so bizarre when you're not into this kind of material, but I felt absolutely jubilant was the word. It was like I was really very excited that I was going to go push right into this little, and this wasn't a major upset. Doesn't matter if it's major or minor. It's the attitude with which I approach it, which is, hey, but I'm delighted this is here. I'm going to embrace this. I'm excited that it's here, because I know on the other side of it I'll be even bigger and more prepared and happier than I was before. So you think, well, that is unusual, but it's also the stance that really allows so much healing to take place. So if you stood back and you looked kind of from that observer position, I find myself moving back as I say this, as put my own self in an observer position. You think, you know what? I'm not going to be afraid of or resistant to any feelings that are triggered, whether it's loneliness at Christmas or upset about seemingly something at some other time. If I see the healing and the acceptance of these emotions and feelings as a doorway to my healing my mind, you would go, well, this is not such a bad thing after all. I don't have to be afraid of this. I don't have to think this means something awful about me. I can see this as, this is a time when I have an opportunity to let go of a lot of old stuff, because, my dear, let me reassure you that by the time all of us are little kids and just starting off to school and, kindergarten and whatever, by this time we have all learned some awful things about ourselves that aren't true, that we're undeserving or unworthy, or nobody wants to be with us, or we don't measure up or something. And all of us have remnants of those ideas programmed in our brains. And those are the ideas that are being triggered as these feelings. See, those feelings are associated with those beliefs. They really don't have anything to do with Christmas, but Christmas comes along and triggers them. So all of this, when seen from a different perspective, is a marvelous way for healing to be accelerated. Now, that's a great big mouthful, so what do you have to say about that?
Well, I decided not to argue with your point of view. I know you have a lot of wisdom, so that is to see that as an opportunity for healing. I mean, I'm not going to jump up and down and
No, that would be very
have balloons
abnormal
and
if you
everything.
go, yay, I can't wait that I'm going to go cry for a month. It's like, no, but to be open enough, none of us are totally open-minded about all of this when we first hear about it, but to be open enough to say, if I could reframe this instead of an experience that I hate, wish would go away, feel powerless before, and I don't like it at all. In other words, rather than that being my response to it, if I could shift my attitude and say, well, I don't know exactly how this works, but if I could adopt the idea that this is a big healing opportunity, then why don't I try it? In other words, for any of us to dismiss anything out of hand without trying it is not very sensible or practical. In other words, I would never, ever, ever suggest anybody just say, oh, yeah, because you say it, it's true. I think everybody should try it for themselves. If it's true, you will feel better. just like as you approach the pain in your back from a different perspective, it was better. So the idea would be try this and see what happens. If you never try it, you'll never know. So, like, you think, well, it seems like it would be in my own best interests to try it and see what happens. So here's now the interesting thing is just tell me how you feel now.
Yes, I have, I think, willingness to try something new. I think that's one of my strong suits.
Excellent.
So, I will try it.
Excellent. That's the only thing we're asked to do is to say, would you be, if you don't like the way things are going now, would you be willing to try plan B? And if we say, nope, I'm positive I'm right, I'm positive that if I can tweak my own approach, it will work better. It's like, okay, well, have a nice life trying to make that work. But if plan B is presented and you think this seems strange, it seems unnatural, I don't know that I've run into this before, but I'm willing because it's so in your own best interest to be willing. And that's all we're asked to do is to say, okay, I'll just give this a try. So I want you to do this again right now. In other words, tell me, how are you feeling now? Not a while ago, but right now.
Well, I'm feeling relieved, and yet I still have a question.
Okay, well, you can do both of those. You can be both relieved and have a question. And I will speak to your relief after you ask me the question.
It seems to me like if I sit there and embrace loneliness, I'd get more lonely and more lonely.
Well, that's what the ego mind tells us, which is why we run from it. And that's why we go, what if this isn't true? What if it's my pushing against and resisting my loneliness that's actually making it worse? And if I stop fighting against it and go, okay, just be here. This is just fine. Just be here, and you will see that something different will happen. So again, this is a very practical situation. So, like, whatever it is that gives you some relief seems like is a good way to proceed. So, more questions.
That's true. If it works, in other words, I did the little exercise and I did feel better. So
Yeah,
it was working then.
and right now you said, well, I feel a little better than I did when I called.
Yes.
Okay, and you think, well, bless your heart, you have just proven my case to yourself, which is you have been altering your body chemistry because you have been altering your thoughts. See, some part of you goes, well, this is really weird, but you know what? I'm a courageous woman. I'm willing to try this. And so you did. You were willing to just follow that quick, short little instruction to relax into something, to just let it be there instead of the what we're habituated to, which is just constantly fighting against everything we don't like. And in that short period of time, some shifting neural networks shifted in your brain. In other words, because the shifting in the brain causes the body chemistry to be different. And in that short period of time, different body chemistry resulting in a different emotional feeling experience happened for you right before your very eyes. And so you get to just keep practicing and you will find that it happens every time. That every time you push against or resist or hate or deny or run from, choose your favorite verb, the way you feel, you will throw gasoline on the fire and it will get worse rather than better because you will increase your sense of danger. You'll be increasing your sense of, I'm not safe, I'm not okay, this isn't what I want to have happen. But when you have this more open approach, you open your heart, you open your DNA, you open everything there is to open, like, okay, we're going to be friends instead of enemies. You see already that suggestion in your mind, you know what, loneliness, we're going to be buddies. We're going to be friends. I'm going to hold you by the hand, and it's going to be fine with me that you're here. That stance or that perspective starts to tell your brain, oh, I'm not in danger after all. And it can start to stop dumping all that adrenaline and so on into the body and shutting down all kinds of functions that you don't want shut down. So can you see how powerful this makes you? Because you are the one in charge of your thought processes, and you can change the ones that don't serve you. Now, is it done over the weekend? No, we've got a lot of programming in there that needs to be changed. But when you can prove to yourself so fast that a change of approach or a change of attitude results in feeling a little more relaxed, a little more relieved, well, there you go. That's a pretty fast turnaround, don't you think?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me what you're doing now. How are things now?
Well, I'm feeling a lot better about the whole situation.
Well,
If
bless
I'm
your
somewhere
heart.
where there's Christmas music, I can just remind myself that, oh, I'm, embracing this feeling or whatever the trigger
Absolutely.
is.
And you don't just say it in words, you actually do it. And
Hmm.
what doing it looks like, since it's not an activity like, chopping wood or something like that, it means it's this attitudinal shift that says, you know what, I've learned to be afraid of this feeling, which just makes it worse. So I'm just not going to be afraid of it. And I can see this as a gift in disguise, because being open, see, I want you to listen to this very carefully. When you decide, I'm going to be open, I'm going to open my heart, I'm opening my body, I'm opening my mind, I'm opening whatever it is I've got to open, and allow this experience to be here, you are also opening yourself for more good to be in your life. And that good can be financial good, relationship good, health good, opportunity good. It can be just the way you feel good. Opening is what's associated with feeling better, and closing down, which is what we do when we resist, is associated with feeling worse. So it's not rocket science, but just nobody really ever has the dots connected for them like this, so we don't know how to proceed, because nobody told us. Nobody told you, nobody told me. I had started trying to figure this out a long time ago. It's like I thought, I'm going to find out how life actually works. This doesn't seem to work well, and there's got to be some way that works better. So that's been my life's interest and life's work, and I'm just delighted to pass it on to you, because you don't deserve to feel afraid. You don't deserve to feel bad or suffering or in pain or anything. You don't. Nobody does. So we hurt ourselves unknowingly and unwittingly by closing down to try to defend against feeling a feeling, when just opening up and going, yep, this feeling is just passing through. It's like the weather. In other words, I live here in Florida, and the weather can change certainly at different times of the year, and there can be clouds and there can be sun, and everybody knows that's going to happen. Things are going to pass through. Well, nobody in their right mind would go out and go, no, this thunderstorm can't come through. This is not okay with me. It's like everybody knows a thunderstorm is going to just pass through. And so if we had this more kind of open, yes, right now this feeling is here, but if I'll just leave it alone, it'll pass on through. If you can imagine trying to collect a thunderstorm so that it wouldn't bother you anymore, all you would do is it would just be cast in concrete and be in your life forever, if such a thing were possible. So it's this open approach to things. What does that sound? I hope that sounds exciting to you. I'm interrupting myself because I'm excited on your behalf.
Yes, in some way, at some times, I am open, and I just embrace the feeling.
Good.
And at those times, I do feel a lot better.
Well, I want you to see that as your power of decision in action. In other words, you're deciding that. You're a smart woman. You're deciding that, realizing at that moment, I don't know what triggers you to do it at some times and not at others, but whatever it is that's allowed you to go, I can do this. And you do, and you get good results. And that's not random. This is not a case, well, sometimes when I accept, it will be great. And sometimes when I accept, it won't work. It's not that way. It's very predictable. It's like the sun coming up in the east or appearing to. This is very count onable. That when I stop resisting, so much of what I am resisting just fades away of its own accord. I remember having an experience a long time ago when I was first experimenting with this feeling you're feeling thing, because I grew up the same way everybody did. In our household, you were just supposed to be happy all the time. So there was no modeling for what to do when one was upset. You just weren't supposed to be. So this, I've just had to learn this the same way everybody else has had to learn this. So at some point, and I don't know what kind of upset this was, I don't know if this was sadness or anger or what, probably not anger, but sadness. So I thought, okay, I'm going to give this a try. So I just sat on my sofa, my kids were off at school, and I stopped thinking, which is the key to this. You can't be thinking and feeling at the same time. This is a turn off the intellect, because it is absolutely in the way in this process, if you want to think of it as a process. So I just sat there, and in a flash, I mean in a few seconds, I could feel this energy just kind of move around me in kind of like a little spiral, ended up over the top of my head. And in that few seconds, my feeling state went from feeling heavy to feeling light, and from the other opposite of light is dark, from dark to feeling light, and it was gone. I thought, wow, I'm impressed. And I've done that all my life. Now, some things seem like they're longer and harder than others, but if we totally commit to openly feeling how we feel, the time is greatly shortened when, shall we say, harmony is restored in your mind and thus in your body. But it's totally count onable. It's not random, like on Tuesday it works, but Thursday it doesn't. Or in this situation it does, and this one it doesn't. It always does. So that's why you've got this amazing power, and nobody gets to tell you whether you're going to be willing to do this or not. This is just strictly up to you, and that's marvelous. You don't have to get anybody else's permission. They don't have to like what you're doing. Nobody else is involved, although a lot of people can seem to be the triggers. This healing of your own emotional state and regulating it is strictly your business, and nobody can interfere. Does that sound like good news? Nobody gets a vote on this but you.
Yes, I agree. I mean, but there are things that do happen.
Things happen, of course, things happen with everybody, but I can learn the art of staying open so that when I'm thrown off base, for instance, by something that happens or what somebody does, as quickly as I can recover, so to speak, as quickly as I can just remember, okay, whatever this is, I'm completely open to it. If that involves crying, cry. If you're furious, then you need to do some sort of large motor activity like pound on the bed with a tennis racket or run around the block or do something to get some of that adrenaline out of the body. But whatever it is, you can take appropriate action where action needs to be taken. But the main thing is you become your own best cheerleader in and addressing this feeling as a friend and not an enemy. That's kind of the approach that one must take. Yes, things will happen. In other words, it's not like if you feel the way you feel now and you feel good that you will never have to do this again. You know, we all have that to deal with, but you've got something now that's count onable. There's an attitude that you can continue to uphold and that you continue to put into use so that and you can begin to look at these things that you believe about yourself that aren't true, that are being triggered, and probably you're aware that you believe some things about yourself that are, we'll just call it, too small. They're not nice things that you believe about yourself, because all of us are afflicted with this, and they sit at the bottom of what's causing these distressing feelings to come up. So the whole thing of like allowing yourself to feel how you feel gets you in touch with some of those ideas that you've carried since infancy and childhood that are just crazy ideas. They have no basis in fact, but we didn't know that when they got programmed in. Like, are you aware of one thing that you believe about yourself that comes up when this loneliness thing happens? Anything at all?
Well, I don't I don't think, oh, I'm not okay or anything like that. I mean, I may think about friends I had that I don't have anymore, or friends that died, or
It sounds like you think a lot about loss. In other words, those words sound like loss. But here's what will happen. If you will just allow yourself to feel more what you feel and then realize these feelings aren't attached to the current things that are triggering them, they're attached to these old ideas that I still do in some way hold about myself, ideas that are too small, ideas about what's the matter with me, or um, that's a whole nother session to get into, but that because there are none of us who carry these feelings with us or that are there to be triggered unless we still believe and have some of that old stuff programmed in from when we're little about not measuring up or not being worthy or people aren't going to like me or something. It's like I've never talked to a human being who doesn't have a little rat's nest of that stuff still going on.
oh,
So,
I certainly have had those ideas. I'm not saying they've never happened.
right. Well, there, I'm saying that if you're still prone to upsetness like there are some still hanging around. And that one of the things that's marvelous that can come out of this is as you come back to a more comfortable state, then is a good time to say, okay, what is it? What are some things that I might still actually believe about myself that I wouldn't call them beliefs? I might even call them the truth, but it's a great time to be introspective because you're more open to it than you might be at other times. But life for all of us, as we just kind of wrap this up, is a constant becoming acquainted with layer upon layer upon layer of ways that we sabotage ourselves, about ways that we actually create the experiences that we don't want to have, through various kinds of resistances. So you don't ever come to a place where you go, okay, I'm done, I'm finished, I now know everything about myself and everything else. So, but it's the about myself part that's important. You think there's layer after layer after layer. I mean, I just couldn't even tell you. I don't know if I have time in my life to write a book about all the levels of my own exploration and awareness, and I'll become aware of this and I'll kind of get this healed. Okay, I realized I was programmed that way, I don't have to do that anymore. And then there'll be another layer and another layer. But the good news is everything gets easier and faster, and the and my standard, shall we say, attitude and way of life just gets better and better and better. So it's never ending, at least in this life, to keep discovering ways that we hold ourselves back, things that we believe that aren't true, the way we self-sabotage, because that is always in there as a companion to these distressing and upsetting feelings, whether it's grief, whether it's hopelessness, whether it's loneliness, whether it's whatever it is. They all are tied to something that we still hang on to as a truth about ourselves. And you can listen to some of the other broadcasts, maybe ones we've already done or ones that we will continue to do in the future, about how these beliefs can be revealed to us through the way we perceive other people treating us. Our relationships can tell us so much about what we actually believe. Not what we give lip service to, but what we actually believe. So anyway, thank you ever so much for writing in and for calling. And I hope you feel better now than you did a little while ago. Might that be true?
Yes, I do. I really appreciate this.
And I hope that what you will take away with you are several things. Your goodness, your power. Your power of decision is paramount. The power that you have just built into your own body, that you change your mind, your body chemistry changes, and the way you feel changes. And to be assured that no matter what has happened in the past, no matter what our attitudes have been, no matter what our holding patterns have been, I can always change my mind and go down a different and better path now. I do not have to allow any of my past experience to get in the way of making some new decisions today. So I'm excited for you, and I hope in a few weeks you'll write me and let me know what's going on with you and how you put some of these ideas into practice and how you're feeling. Will you do that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you ever so kindly, and thank you for suggesting this topic. It's a really important one.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Well, my goodness. I hope you were able to clearly hear that when Patty put her attention into this present moment, dropped the stories of lack, and allowed herself to experience what she was actually feeling, both at the physical and emotional levels, she felt better, more relaxed, some relief. And in these exercises, it doesn't matter how much difference there is, it matters that there is a difference at all, because this demonstrates beyond the shadow of a doubt that despite the outer circumstances, attitude and the decision about how to approach what's happening is of singular power and importance. And this always applies to all things. Now notice, I didn't do anything to her. I can't get inside of her brain and rewire it. I can guide her or point her in the right direction, but she had to make the choice, and she did. So if you'd like to know more about what makes you tick, please do write to us at findingpeace@carolhowe.com, and we'll consider your situation. So thank you Now choose to practice feeling how you actually feel during this holiday season, no matter what it is. And we're going to look forward to your returning next week for what I'm just sure will be a wonderful conversation. Thanks for being here, and bye for now.